Hello, welcome everybody. We're glad you're here with us for our HR Huddle on March 22nd. Good to see you again, Jen. I hope you had a good week off.
I had a great week off, Tamara. Thank you.
Great. We are going to continue where we left off, where Jen and I left off. We've been talking about some pathways, career pathways. And Jen and I talked a couple weeks ago about different pathways, and we were identifying 4 of them. We talked about 2 of them and thought we'd go deep in the other 2. So the 2 that we think we already talked about a bit is, what if I want to have a lattice move and go off the ladder I'm on, progressing on, and move to something else and start to progress on that. So maybe I'm in audit and I want to go into talent development, or maybe I'm in tax and I want to go into client accounting, like that. So we talked about that. And then we also talked about what we kind of called the non-traditional worker. So maybe I'm remote, maybe I'm part-time, what's my pathway for that, and making sure that we are not limiting people's pathways because they're remote or maybe a part-time partner, and we're seeing more of that. And more firms are in discussions about that. And so what does that look like? So those were the 2 that we went deeper in, I think. And then the 2 we wanted to talk about today is, I am buried, I'm overwhelmed, I'm up to my eyeballs. Don't make me grow. Like, can I just stay here and hang for a while? And what does that mean to my career here at the firm? And then the second piece is, I don't know what the path is for the ladder I'm on. What does that look like? What's the definition of that? What's the timing? What are the expectations, et cetera? So I think those are the 2. Jen, is there anything you'd add to those descriptions?
No, I mean, the only other piece of background maybe for our friends and viewers is the idea that, people have a lot of career choices outside of our firms, and we want to make sure they're super clear about what's available to them inside our firms. We think that discussing pathways, making them really transparent and clear, is a critical retention strategy. It's an employee engagement strategy, but it's a really critical retention strategy, because if people aren't clear about their options and they feel sort of stuck, or they make stuff up about their options, we might want to relocate out of the city. That means I have to quit my job. I make that up because I'm not aware that there's a pathway that allows me to continue to grow with the firm and live somewhere else, because we're not transparent. Then we're going to see turnover. And so that's what this is about. The context that this discussion lives inside of is employee retention and engagement, and the crucial nature of crystal clear, transparent options and pathways for our folks, and not just published once or rolled out in one, I don't know, company meeting or
in the handbook,
or orientation, but regularly discussed with people at their reviews and different coaching meetings and that sort of stuff. So people really know there are different paths I can take. I have options here. I should explore those first before I explore the ones outside our doors.
Yep. Well, and I think that's a good point, because I think sometimes we hear that, people are leaving, especially that middle, that senior level, whatever that 2 to 5, 2 to 8 year, person is like, I need to go get other experience. Like, I need to go, see what else is available. And yet we'll have firm leaders tell us, and HR professionals tell us, oh my gosh, there's so much they could experience right here. Why are they going outside of these walls? Why are they going outside of this firm to, find those experiences? And so I think that's really important. And so I think on that note, maybe we start with, what if I don't want to grow? Let's tackle that one first and say, maybe I want to stay right where I am. Maybe I'm a senior, or I'm a manager in a firm, and I want to, I like my career. I like what I'm doing. I don't necessarily want to take on more responsibility. Maybe I have other family obligations, whatever the reason is, that they want to stay, where they are. And I think, there used to be an old norm of up and out. And so I had to continue to progress, or I would have to, eventually leave the firm. There wasn't going to be a ladder or a path for me. And I think today, as we look at the different roles that we need and the capacity requirements that we have in our firms, and I don't know any firm right now that, is not having a capacity, crunch. how do we create those positions for them? And I think one of the concerns often is, well, what about other people that are coming up underneath them? Can they leapfrog them? We would say yes. Will that person that's staying where they are, will that stall other people? And we don't think it has to be, because it can be a one size fits one career path for each of the individuals. So I think that's, one of the places to look, as we have people, they want to stay where they are, they want to pause. And often it's a pause. It's not a permanent, but sometimes it is. What does that look like? How do we define that?
Well, and Tamara, we talked about this last time we talked about pathways, but there's selfish interests that we have as leaders with our people. And it's mostly like, I want you to stay with us. If you do work with me and my clients, I want you to keep doing that work. If I've taught you a lot of things and you provide support to me, I want to keep getting that support. If you are my second on certain clients and I want to transition those clients, I want you to be the first, because then I don't have to teach anyone else. So just acknowledging that as leaders, we have selfish interest, and that as we talk about our people's pathways, we have to sort of acknowledge what our selfish interest is, but not allow it to block or screw up our people. And on this one, I don't want to grow right now. It can be very easy to put my selfish interest as your manager on you and be like, I need you to grow right now because I want you to step in and start doing the stuff that a manager or senior manager does, including I want to transition all the billing to you now, or whatever. Like I have designs on what I want from you, and my selfish interest could make you feel bad or something if I'm not careful. And so, I know that some might hear this and think, well, wait a minute, we've got to consider the needs of the business. We've got to consider the needs of the client. We've got to consider the needs of various stakeholders and not just the individual employee. And I agree. It has to be win-win-win or whatever you want to call it. But I want to acknowledge that if an employee feels like they are being pressed into something that won't work for their lives, they will quit, or they will break down under it, and then they'll have failure that's hard to come back from. And so, we can say, well, wait a minute, I want them to do this because that's what's good for the business, or that's what's good for me. I get it. But all that's going to do is put them in a corner. And when they're in a corner, they're either going to collapse, they'll be resentful, perhaps, and grouchy with people, or they'll start to fail, or they will start to get the resume out. I mean, it's,
or all the above.
Oh yeah, yes, exactly, in that order, by the way. So, and I hate that. I know that as leaders, what we want is it to be simple, and we want it to be like just everybody sort of be consistent. And can't we all just stick together and follow the path, the one normal path or whatever? I get it, but that's not real. And so, as it relates to employees on this, I don't want to grow right now. The first thing I try to tell myself when I hear that from others is that's not permanent. It could be permanent, but it's probably not permanent. It's a transitional situation. Don't overreact. Don't get your selfish interest up in a bundle. Back away a little bit. Take a few breaths. Recognize that this person is saying, I need space. That's all they're saying. And I want to sit here where I am and figure out what I need to do. And I love it that they would speak up and say it. And then you get to give them that space and then maybe help them in an inquiry to figure out, what they want next and what their boundaries are and what's inhibiting them. And are there other choices for those things? And you could provide mentoring and coaching and space, all of those things, and let them figure out what's next. Because it could be like, we hear this a lot from women returning from maternity leave. They don't want to return from maternity leave and jump a level in their commitment because they're freaking out that they might be leaving the baby. Even if leaving the baby is working remotely and the nanny's got the baby in the other room, if they just did 6, 8, 12 weeks with the baby, they don't want to come back to the office and feel like they're just, pressured into stepping up into something significantly more. Now, some do, by the way. Some are aching for that promotion. They wish they got it before they went out. So this is one size fits one, as Tamara said. And so, but some aren't, that's not the place for them to get that promotion or that next level of work. So you just have to figure it out. And it's not just women returning from maternity leave. It could be a senior manager who really feels like they're operating almost like a partner right now. And they want to get that under their belt a little better before they are asked to step into principal or step into partner. So I think we just have to really recognize our selfish interest could get in the way, but also it doesn't have to be permanent.
Yes. And so two things. You're making me think of two things. One is that this one size fits one, if we play to people's highest and best use and skill set, we have so many needs in the business right now. How can we best deploy that person? How can we best utilize that person? And so if we can identify what are their gifts and where do they most contribute the value, maybe I can give billing to them, as your example. What can I take off their plate? Who else could we develop that might be able to take on a responsibility? So that's one thing to think about. And then you just made me think about moving to the ladder. So we often hear, I don't know what it means to be a principal, or I don't know what it means to be a partner or a shareholder. How much more effort, what's going to be required of me? And it's hard to articulate that. Often they're doing much of the job already. They're good. They're already doing much of the job. And we try to say it's going to be incremental. There's going to be some learning, from a shareholder or a partnership perspective. But that's another reason to start to have that definition. What does it mean to progress on the ladder I'm on? What are the expectations? And sometimes that's why people want to pause. I don't know what that means. So let me hang here and figure this out first before I move to that next level, or let me have some conversations and learn about it. And so they're, kind of pushing the brakes because of that. And so the more definition we have on the ladder and what the expectations are, I think can help that too. And
Tamara, in a traditional HR sense, the definition of the traditional ladder is a competency model. And the competency model talks about what skills are required at each level of or rung of the ladder. In a traditional accounting, like audit or tax model, associate or staff is the first column on that competency model. Senior usually, then maybe supervisor, depending on the size of your firm, then manager, maybe senior manager, and then maybe principal or non-equity partner perhaps, and then full equity partner, or even some firms have partial equity partner. So, there may be different columns, if you will, of levels. And it's usually, these competency models are usually built by discipline. So we would have a different competency model for tax than we would for audit or client accounting or consulting or advisory or administration. I mean, they would all perhaps have different columns or levels or rungs on this ladder. And then the competencies, broadly, you have leadership competencies, you have technical competencies, which are the technical skills. In the case of an operational or administrative role, it depends on what their technical competency might be, but maybe it's an IT role, so all the technical competencies would relate to their particular IT discipline. For tax, technical would be related to the ability to, to understand tax rules and apply them to both tax advice and the compliance forms that we complete for individuals, for high net worth, for partnerships, for corporations, all of those different options that we have, including highly technical ones like international or estate and trust. And so that would be in the technical row. Leadership row would include things like my behavior, my communication skills, probably my time management, my personal development type skills. Then as I progress in my career, business development skills, people development skills, my client service skills, which really are there regardless of your role. You would always have a client service area of competency, because if I'm an operational person serving internal clients, I still have to be doing client service. So, you build this competency model where you say, for a senior, what leadership skills do they need to have mastered, or experiences or abilities do they need to have? What client service skills, abilities, or experiences do they need to have? What technical skills, experiences, or skills do they need to have? And then probably at the senior level, they are doing a little people development in the fact that they're supervising often on jobs, and they're delegating, and they're managing the completion of work and things like that. So there's some of that. There might be some business development in early network development, maybe social media and that sort of thing. So if you think about that by discipline, by level, and you build that out and you document it in great detail, and it might sound kind of tedious or onerous, we have examples we could share with you if you want to send us a message in social media and ask for them. We'd be happy to share them, but you have to develop them for your firm. And as Tamara said, then I know what to expect. Now I know what you're thinking when you think, oh, you'll be promoted from senior manager to partner. We ought to be able to see the differences in the things listed in the partner column. And I could read those and say, oh, so those are the things I'll be doing that I might not be doing yet at the senior manager level. And these are the expectations over here in that job. And that's a big deal, I think, if we could be that clear. And that's ultimately a wonderfully transparent career pathway.
Yeah. And then you can map learning on top of that, like another level of it would be not only the expectations, but then I could start to develop learning ladders and a learning map for how to provide those skills, looking at those experiences so it can layer on. And another layer then would be, as I'm progressing from manager, senior manager to principal partner, what are the expectations for that? And often there's some benchmarks or financial metrics, around the clients that I own under Billings. Maybe there's some business development goals. There's probably some firm economic expectations. What's the revenue per partner? What does it take for us to be able to, promote that? And understanding practice economics, I think, is important. What is the agreement? From a partner agreement perspective, what am I signing up for? And we would share that sooner rather than later. If I have high potentials, they're on the path, somewhere manager, senior manager for sure. We should be starting to share that information with them, maybe do some huddles and, talk about those things and answering some questions. I know we talk about 12 questions, Jen, that, your high potentials have about their path forward. And those are some of the questions that I have. What does the agreement say? What's the financial buy-in? What am I on the hook for the buyouts of the retiring partners? They see the retiring partners. They have an idea of how a partnership model works. But what is it for your firm? What does the agreement say? And what are the expectations for that? So there's like a whole list then to start to lay out as you start to progress towards that, partner level.
And Tamara, I do a lot of emerging partner sessions around the country with different emerging partner groups every year. And there's a weird, like, tribal sort of folklore, handed down from generations or something, rumor mill out there about, well, here's what I heard at our partnership. One guy told me that this, but it's not like official. And then so everybody in that little round table that's talking thinks their partnership works that way too. And if it's negative, if it's a bad thing, all of a sudden, all these people who, they say in the absence of information, people will make up their own, and it's almost always negative. They'll also take information from other people and assume it's their information, so we have a saying at Convergence: manage the message or the message will manage you. As it relates to emerging leaders that you want to be on the path to partner, you have to manage that message. And not just the message that, hey, you're on the pathway and here's the timing and the guys above you are not the clog above you and you will be able to bypass them. And here's what the economics have to look like for you to get there. And here's the things I need you to personally do to develop into that partnership. And here's what our buy-in looks like. Like Tamara said, there's a whole list of things, but don't let the external environment manage that message for you. And that's what we do. Or the internal rumor mill, right. Where, and sometimes, partners are well-meaning and we're all caring about this young up-and-comer that we really want to see do well. And we all give kind of different sentences of, here's what I think is going to happen. I think you're a year or two out, and somebody else says, it won't be more than 5 years. And then somebody else is like, it's any day now, kid, and all that stuff. And that's just us not managing the message. And that's not really being clear about the pathway. So we want to get unified together also about what we're telling our future leaders so that they get consistent messages, transparent, consistent messages, and that they can be clear about what their options are. The other thing, Tamara, and I don't know if I said this a couple weeks ago, but I've made a few phone calls out of my leadership program coaching because we coach, a whole bunch of us on our team coach young people, future leaders, important leaders to their firms. And I've made a few calls to senior leaders at some of the firms I'm coaching and said, hey, I'm nervous about my coachees. I feel like you need to sit down with them and be really specific about their timing to make the next step to promotion, because I'm worried that they're getting talked to by clients. And I haven't done it with all my firms, but a few that I just get the feeling that it is so murky for them and feel so far away that I'm afraid they'll leave. I'm afraid a client will offer them a job that sounds like a lot more, and it sounds like new, shiny experience. And they'll say something like, you won't have to work as hard, and they'll get them. And it's not the right thing for that person. I don't think it's the right pathway on the one size fits one. And I think they'll regret it later because they'll end up maybe working less hard, possibly. I'm not sure of that. They won't have as much variety, and they won't have the potential that a partner has in a CPA firm in terms of earnings and freedom and
the diverse kind of work and relationships.
And autonomy and strategy, being able to build a business with your peers and grow it into something and cause it to be something. And anyway, I just think I just want so many of these young people to stay in our profession and grow to partnership when it's right for them. But I fear that our silence at the firm leader level is part of our problem in keeping them. And I'd really like us to open up and soon.
Well, and I don't think some of those conversations you were just pointing to, Jen, fits on a competency model or in, even in coaching structures. And so I think that's really important to highlight that we need to talk more about the benefits of partnership, of the benefits of being in public accounting. And, right now, young people watch these deadlines and the, just the shifts and the change and the overwhelm and the capacity. And, it's an abundance. We're blessed with opportunity. It's a great time to be in public accounting, but it can be overwhelming. And they're like, why am I going to do this? And so we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the relationships, the diversity, the freedom, the money, and not keep that here. And I'll share that with you when you've arrived. I want them to experience it. So I don't know where that fits on a competency model, but gosh, it's missing.
Well, it fits in the pathway discussion for sure. And Tamara, a young woman on tax Twitter was going to go present to a middle school, I think, about, what CPAs do and why it was cool or something like that. And she asked, I need some material, and I wrote back a bunch of stuff in a, kind of barfed it all up in one tweet. But one of the things that I wrote was guardians of the world's economy. Like on a broad scale, the accounting profession, is in many respects the guardian of our entire global economy because the U.S. has such an impact on it, but also our democratic system and our U.S. economy. Yeah. Keeping it honest, keeping it clean, keeping it straight, measuring it, reporting on it. It's just, and then you get into the make a difference for clients and helping people realize their life streams and pay for their kids' college educations. And there's just so much there. And you're right. We don't do enough of the what's in it for me to stay here. What is it like to be up there as a partner in the firm? What are the benefits? Yep. And they're broad ones like the ones I just said. There are also smaller ones like maybe unlimited time off or being able to go to cool conferences and take your spouse or your kid or whatever sometimes, or maybe fellow colleagues and meet and do social activities in addition to the business activities. Things that are small, but they're real benefits, and we should be sharing them and not hiding them.
Yep, for sure. So we are more than at time. So hopefully this helps kind of round out that conversation about career pathways that we've been having. We will post some of these tools when we post this out to YouTube, but if you want it, let us know. The competency models, the 12 questions, or anything else that you're wondering about with your career pathways, let us know. And we can also continue if we want to go deeper on something else, or if there's other topics, reach out to us. So in the meantime, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week.
Okay,
Thank
see
you
you.
very much.